with me. But you know, I was thinking this week as I was preparing for this Mother's Day message, again, how fast the years are going by. And the seasons just go so quickly. I was talking to somebody the other week before church, and we're both commenting on, I think as we get older, time kind of speeds up dramatically. Has anyone found that? Time is going fast. And I can't believe that our eldest is married and living in Christchurch, and then our second one is 21, and then our youngest is in his last year at college. And time just keeps going quickly, and often we just want to hit pause because we just want to hold on to these moments. And I remember thinking that when my kids were little, I was like, I just want to hit pause. I don't want to lose these moments. But you know, time keeps going, and I think it's about us learning, how do we make the most of today? How do we value today, and just do what we can just to make a difference in the lives of the people around us? We've been given an opportunity, no matter where we are, whether we're here today and whether we're parents or we're not parents. You know, this is not like, I know often, you know, Mother's Day, Father's Day, people come along and say, oh, this is going to be so irrelevant. This is also for you, whether you're a parent or not, because I want to encourage all of us that we all get an opportunity to reach out and to touch other people's lives, no matter where we are. As many of you know, we got a puppy at the beginning of this year, and lovely Maverick, our golden retriever puppy, he is 7 months old now. His time is marching on, and he's about 23 kilograms. He puts on 1 kilogram a week, and it's incredible. See, even dogs grow really fast. And, you know, I shared earlier this year about what struck me when we got a puppy was how suddenly it felt like being a parent all over again for the first time. Because there's all these decisions you have to make. You know, what food are you going to feed your puppy? And then it's, you know, at what point are you going to vaccinate them? Because even there's like big debates over at what stage they should be vaccinated. When do you do other things to your puppy so that you don't have more puppies? You know, as well as that, do you let them sleep on your bed or do you let them sleep on a crate? Thankfully, we did look ahead and think our dog may be like 30 kgs one day, so he's not sleeping on the bed because that wouldn't be very comfortable, I think. So, but there was just all these questions, right? And everybody had an opinion. Even people without dogs have opinions on how you should raise your dog. And so it's very stressful and very hard. And I just made me think, this is so like parenting. When you first have your first baby and you think, I don't know what to do, and you talk to people and everybody has a different opinion, even those who also haven't had babies before. And it's really, really challenging. And I just think in those moments, you know, for us, what we did was we read books, we talked to other people, and we got good input from people who, well, with our puppy, had raised their dogs really well. And so we're like, okay, they're the ones we want to talk to and find out information from. But the thing is, we have all these moments in life that can be new to us. And sometimes the way forward in those new moments, I think, is we pray for wisdom and we chat to other people. The reality is God, right at the beginning of creation, he made us to be in relationship with other people, to walk alongside the other people that we do life with, to help one another. We get to do that in our families, but we also get to do that here in our church family also, and to walk alongside those people who are our neighbours and our workmates and our friends. In Luke chapter 10, verse 27, Jesus says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength, like we sang about, and with all your mind, and love your neighbour as yourself. And a life, I think, that is truly complete and is strong on every side needs to have these 3 elements in place: to love ourselves, to love others, and to love God. You know, firstly, it's really good to take care of yourself and to care about yourself. And I think mums especially need to hear that, because often mums are the ones that give out all the time for their kids and for their families. But it's important that we look after ourselves and that we love ourselves, because it's very hard to love our neighbours if we don't love ourselves first. And when we do that, we find incredible fulfillment when we find out what we were created for. What are those giftings that are within us? And then as we seek to put those in place in our lives and live them out every day. However, some people never get past this first step, and sadly they become very self-focused and end up living a very narrow life, all for themselves. The second one, to live a life of meaning, we must also concern ourselves with others and caring for those around us. And I think parenting forces us to do that. Who discovered how selfish they were when they became a parent? I think that's what struck me. Wow, you can't do whatever you want to do whenever you want to do it. Suddenly your whole life is going to, work around these little people. We're created as people to be interdependent and interrelated, needing one another, which in our Western world we can rile against with our independence. Yet God has created us for families to be a part of and also to have relationships with those around us. Then we move to the third one, loving God. True meaning comes into our life when we love God and have Him a part of everything that we do and the decisions we make. And as we face challenges and difficulties in life, we're reminded again the deep need that we have for Him. Some may never move beyond themselves and others, but yet they still have spiritual experiences that they can't explain by natural means. And so questions come up. What is the deal? What is the point of this all? This last week I was reading a sermon written by Martin Luther King, and the funny thing was I didn't know it was written by him till sort of 3/4 of the way through it, but I was reading it and I was like, wow, this is so good. This is really impacting. But there was something that he said that struck me, and he said, without Him, he's talking about God, without God, life is meaningless drama in which the decisive scenes are missing. But with Him, we are able to rise from tension-packed valleys to the sublime heights of inner peace. I thought that is just so beautiful, to rise from the tension-packed valleys to the sublime heights of inner peace. There are longings and things that we so need. We're in the valleys of life, which are only satisfied through the incredible peace with God. When people are looking for hope, looking for peace, looking for encouragement, may they find it within us. Because we have this connection with God, with His love, His insight, His wisdom, His knowledge and understanding, then we can be a light to those around us and dispel the darkness. And I think as parents especially, we get to play that role for our children. When they're scared or fearful or they're going through something difficult and challenging, we can come and we can speak the light, we can speak the life and the hope into the situations that they are going through. Matthew chapter 5 verse 14 to 16 says, "You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand and gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." That's why I wanted light here this morning, because I wanted to remind us that we get to be a light to those people who are around us. Another version says, bringing God colours to the world. Bringing God colours to the world, that's what we get to do to those around us. I wonder what that looks like for you and for me. We're called to be a light to those who we come into contact with, and to hold hope for those who can't hold hope for themselves. To speak life into them, because the seasons may change and people may grow and move on, but there is still always the need to speak hope into the people we are close to. And this morning I want us to turn to, if you've got a Bible or your device or your phone or iPad, turn to Acts chapter 9 this morning, and we're going to look at the story of a woman, and she's a woman who isn't spoken about very much. Well, I don't think I've ever really heard her spoken about in church. But I just came across this story a couple of weeks ago, and I wanted to share it this morning because I thought it was really applicable for what I'm sharing today. So turn to Acts chapter 9, and we're going to read from verse 36. And it says here, "In Joppa there was a disciple named Tabitha, which when translated is Dorcas, who was always doing good and helping the poor. About that time she became sick and died, and her body was washed and placed in an upstairs room. Lydda was near Joppa, so when the disciples heard that Peter was in Lydda, they sent 2 men to him and urged him, "Please come at once." Peter went with them, and when he arrived, he was taken upstairs to the room. All the widows stood around him, crying and showing him the robes and other clothing that Dorcas had made while she was still with them. Peter sent them all out of the room. Then he got down on his knees and he prayed. Turning toward the dead woman, he said, "Tabitha, get up." She opened her eyes, and seeing Peter, she sat up. He took her by the hand and helped her to her feet. Then he called the believers and the widows and presented her to them alive. This became known all over Joppa, and many people believed in the Lord. Peter stayed in Joppa for some time with a tanner named Simon. So here's this woman called Tabitha. This morning we're going to call her Tabitha, even though she's also called Dorcas. And so we're going to focus on Tabitha this morning. And it's interesting with Tabitha, you know, she was the only woman in the New Testament where the feminine form of the Greek word disciple is used. She's the only woman who is referred to as disciple. That's how close she was to following God. She was a woman who was known for her faithfulness. She was always busy caring for others, thinking of their needs, and seeing how she could help provide for them. And here she was, this devoted disciple of Jesus, and she finds herself becoming very ill and dying. You know, the thing with being a disciple of Jesus, it doesn't mean that life is always easy. Like Nee was talking about, there's still tough times that come when we follow Jesus. And here she's in this place, and she's passed away. And there her friends, these widows, they come and they gather around her, and they are not strangers to loss. They know what it is to lose somebody that they love, and so they are grieving, and they gather around her at this time. And the scripture says that she was washed and laid in the upstairs room, yet interestingly, they never anointed her body for burial. In this moment, Tabitha, who had once carried hope for others, could no longer carry hope for herself, but those that were surrounding her could. They hadn't anointed her for burial yet because they were still holding hope and believing for a miracle when she no longer could. And that's something that God asks us to do as well as image bearers, people made in the image of God, to hold hope for others when they can no longer hold hope for themselves. When you're sitting alongside someone, whether it's a child or a friend or a loved one, and they're struggling so deeply in despair, it's powerful for you to come and say, "It's going to get better. I've got faith for the future. This isn't where your story ends. There is going to be a brighter day coming." In those moments when we can hold hope for those around us, when they can't hold hope for themselves. We're each called to be carriers of hope. And here these women were doing just that. And Tabitha, she'd built this community around her life, but it wasn't for herself. She had built this community because she had poured out for others. And as they stood there in their grief, they were showing Peter the robes and the garments that she had made for them. They had carried them with them because her impact on them had been so great, because these women had been seen by her. She hadn't just patted them on the back when they were going through difficult times, grieving. She truly saw them, and she paused and she stopped and she asked herself, how can I help them? How can I make their day brighter? What can I do for them? How can I provide for them? And so she had made these garments specifically, individually for each one of them. And here they were holding these garments in their moment of despair. And I wonder if Tabitha knew what these garments had meant for these women, that they held them now as they cried over her loss. Because we seldom see the worth of what we do. And I bet Tabitha had no idea what it had meant for these women when she had done these things for them. And for each of us, do we see the value in the things that we do when we pray for that friend or call up that workmate or care for our sick child through the night? Do we see the worth that is carried in that moment? How it is for that other person and how it might impact them and make them feel? Maybe we would be glad to do that more if we realized how vital that is for those around us. You know, some years ago, I was running a women's conference here at church, and it began on the Friday night. And at the end of that first session, I became really ill. And right through the night, I don't know if it was food poisoning or a virus or what it was, but I was so ill. And all through that night, I was sick. And then all through the Saturday, I was at home really, really ill. And Peter had to come, he had to speak the Saturday night message instead of me. Did they make you wear a crown or something? They made him wear like a crown, a tiara, because there was a theme. Anyway, so the poor guy, he had to step in at the last minute. And during that conference, I'd gotten my good friend Cherie to come and stay with us because she was our guest speaker for the conference. So while I was at home becoming well acquainted with my bathroom, she was down here speaking and leading worship and doing all these things. And I remember she came home on the Saturday night, and by this point I was really weak, and I was lying on the couch, and she was really concerned for me. And she had a nursing background. And I remember during that night she set her alarm every 2 hours. And she got up every 2 hours during the night to check on me, take my pulse, give me ice, new face cloth. And she so looked after me during that night. And recently I was staying with her, and somehow I was reminded of that night, and I said to her, do you remember all those years ago when you stayed and you did that for me? You got up through the night, and she just laughed. She was like, no, I don't remember that at all. And I mean, she had young boys at the time, and she had to travel back home afterwards, but still she did that for me. And it would have been inconvenient, and I'm sure she would have loved her sleep, but her care and her compassion for me overrode everything else. And for me, that was a really valuable moment, because while I was feeling so ill, somebody was getting up and caring for me in that moment. Never doubt the impact that you're making. Don't doubt the worth in the garments that you make for others. Those things that you do and the way that you give out to others, they might seem insignificant, and they may even go very unnoticed, but you just never know the difference it will be making. And here we are, we see these women, and they're standing around holding the fruit of the life of Tabitha. And she hadn't lived for herself, but she'd lived for others. And now here, where these women were holding these garments in their hands, they were holding more than that. They were holding the legacy that it was in their heart that would not fade away, even though she'd passed away. Because she'd made them feel loved, and she'd made them feel accepted and seen and not forgotten. Sometimes we go through life and things are challenging, and it might look like something has died in our life. It may not be a person, but it might be a hope or a dream or a desire, and it can feel like that thing has died. And I want to offer you some hope today. And this morning I want to show you this flower, and this flower is called a protea. And these flowers actually, they grow in South Africa, but they also grow here because it was in my parents' garden. And so they definitely grow here in New Zealand as well. But I want to talk to you briefly about the protea flower, because God puts things in creation to show us things and teach us things. And I came across this amazing video talking about the protea last week. And I wanted to share with you the fact that in South Africa, there are these wildfires that rip through, and they burn off all of the trees and the different flowers and the bushes that are there. But the thing is that when the wildfires come through, there are plants like the protea that actually need fire to stimulate them, because then they'll release seeds which then germinate in the cooler weather. And after a wildfire, the protea might look very, very burnt and very scorched, and like nothing will come from it. But the reality is that the protea holds a special promise, that something beautiful is going to rise from the ashes. And I want to encourage you today that sometimes we look at our life and we might feel like we're a bit burnt, like things are a bit hard and things are a bit difficult. But the reality is that often it's through those burnt times and those difficult moments that seeds will be released, and then new life comes again. Hope rises again. You know, God says to Isaiah in chapter 61, verse 3, to bestow on them a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning, and a garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair. They'll be called oaks of righteousness, a planting of the Lord for the display of his splendor. So even when that relationship may seem dead, or that situation seems dead, or the loss is so great, I want to encourage you that there is hope that will come in your life, even if it looks a bit different to how it once looked. Tabitha was prayed for and she came alive. And I wonder what it was like for her to open her eyes and be surrounded by these women that then she saw who were holding the garments, the things that she had made. Because the reality is, for most of us, we will never see people standing around holding the fruit of our lives, holding the things that we have done for them. And I bet Tabitha was probably shocked because she never realized that those things that she had created for those women actually touched them like they had. Because much of what we do feels mundane, it feels unnoticed, it feels unimportant, and it feels unworthy of any attention. For all of us, we get the opportunity to be like Tabitha, to look and to truly see the people around us and the things that they're going through, and to care for them, and to reach out for them, and to see the need and go, how can I help? How can I be a person that carries hope? How can I be a person that carries light?